If you were hired to architect a nation's digital future, you'd probably bring a Stanford computer science degree to the table. You probably wouldn't bring a bachelor's in early childhood education and, a background in theology. But today, we're looking at a tech CEO who did exactly that.
Yeah, it is a massive contradiction to our standard Silicon Valley narrative. We are so conditioned to expect the whole dorm room hacker origin story, right? So when we encounter a completely different blueprint for innovation, it really forces us to reevaluate what actually makes technology successful.
Exactly. And that is the exact mission of today's deep dive. We are looking at a really fascinating stack of sources. So professional profiles, corporate handouts, and business data. And they're all mapping out Rwanda's rapidly evolving tech scene.
Specifically, we're zooming in on Koffia Annane and Zirangiramana. He's the founder of Tech INNOVATORS.
Right. And we want to figure out how someone who started out teaching little kids is currently helping to build the digital infrastructure of an emerging economy. Okay, let's unpack this. Because looking at Koffia Annane's professional roots, they just seem completely counterintuitive for someone running a digital agency.
They really do on the surface. I mean, he holds a bachelor's degree in early childhood education from the University of Rwanda, specifically the College of Education. And his early career roles are just deeply embedded in the pedagogical trenches.
Yeah, the sources list him working as an assistant head teacher, a school-based mentor, and a curriculum developer. So he spent his formative professional years focused entirely on human development.
Right, and his academic background doesn't even stop at education. The sources note his studies also include theology and missiology.
I'll admit I had to look that last one up. Missiology.
It's pretty niche.
Yeah, it's the study of religious missions and their methods, which fundamentally revolves around community outreach, cross-cultural communication, and entering a community to provide structured support.
And when you frame it that way, the jump to leading a tech company suddenly doesn't seem so vast. Missiology and education are both disciplines rooted in understanding how groups of people adopt new paradigms.
That makes a lot of sense.
Right. If you are trying to introduce a foreign concept, whether that is a new curriculum to a child or a new digital infrastructure to a community, you have to understand the psychological and cultural starting point of your audience.
That is such a vital distinction because usually software engineering is entirely about optimizing for the machine. How do we make the code run faster? How do we reduce server load?
Exactly. It's all technical.
But Koffia's background is entirely about optimizing for the human. Building a nation's digital economy without digital literacy is like handing a kid an encyclopedia in a language they can't read. Koffia's background in early childhood education means he inherently understands that you have to build the foundation first.
What's fascinating here is how seamlessly those pedagogical principles translate into the world of tech adoption. Think about the cognitive science of early childhood education.
Breaking things down, right?
Exactly. You are trained to take overwhelmingly complex ideas and break them down into their most fundamental, digestible primitives. You study how the human brain absorbs new information, what keeps a user engaged, and how to measure their comprehension in real time.
Which means good UI and UX is fundamentally just applied pedagogy. If you apply a teacher's mindset to software design, you stop building interfaces that just look sleek and start building interfaces that actually teach the user how to navigate them as they click around.
That is the crucial pivot. You aren't just building tech. You are building tech that people can adopt intuitively. And the documentation shows Koffia didn't abandon his educational roots when he transitioned to the tech sector. He actively integrated them.
He kept up with his certifications, right?
Yeah, the profiles highlight several ongoing certifications he maintains, specifically the 1 Million Teacher Certificate and the AGGIS Trust Certificate.
Oh, and alongside a Leaders of the World Certificate?
Those definitely aren't your typical Python or AWS coding boot camps. Far from it. The 1 Million Teachers Program is a global initiative focused on empowering educators to act as change agents within their communities. It is pure capacity building at the grassroots level.
And the AGGIS Trust.
That one focuses heavily on peace building and ethical leadership. By keeping these certifications active, he is signaling to the market that his approach to technology remains completely human-centric. The technology is merely the vehicle. The end goal is community development and ethical empowerment.
So if we accept that his teaching background is a feature, not a bug, how does that actually manifest when he's running a business? Because leading a classroom is, very different from managing a digital agency's bottom line.
Very different.
That brings us to CanTech Innovators, which the sources note was founded around 2022.
And the translation from educational theory to business execution is where this gets highly practical. CanTech is headquartered in Kigali, which is Rwanda's capital, with operations extending into regions like Nyagatare.
Yeah.
The corporate data classifies their team size as between 10 and 49 members.
Which means they are a mid-sized, agile team. Like, not a couple of freelancers, but not a massive bureaucratic corporation either. Yet when you look at their service menu, it's incredibly broad.
Oh, it covers everything.
Right. They offer web and app development, SEO, graphic design, media production, basically the full stack of a digital agency. But they heavily pair all of that with training and capacity building.
Which ties right back into their official slogan. It's turning ideas into smart digital solutions that work.
Yeah, solutions that work. It prioritizes functional impact over technological novelty. But here's where it gets really interesting. Is it a risk for a relatively new company to split its focus so widely?
How so?
Well, they're acting as a digital agency building e-commerce platforms, but also functioning as an educational institute training youth. Doesn't that dilute their impact? Most incubators will tell a relatively young company of 10 to 49 people to niche down, pick one vertical, and dominate it.
I see what you mean. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, particularly within the context of an emerging digital economy like Rwanda's, this dual approach isn't a vulnerability. It is actually the company's core competitive advantage.
Wait, really? How does doing two completely different things give them an advantage?
Because the traditional advice to niche down assumes you are operating in a mature, saturated market where the consumer already knows exactly how to use the product you're selling.
Oh, I see. You're saying the rules change when the market itself is still building its digital fluency.
Completely. In a rapidly developing tech ecosystem, providing an advanced tool is completely useless if the client's workforce doesn't possess the baseline literacy to operate it. Dropping advanced e-commerce software into a local business without prior digital literacy training is like installing a bullet train on dirt roads. You have to lay the traps first.
That is such a good point. Wait, so you're saying the bottleneck in emerging tech markets isn't the technology itself, it's the human translation layer?
Exactly. If CanTech builds a beautiful inventory management system for a business in Nyagatare, but the staff there don't know how to troubleshoot basic errors or update the database, the software fails.
And when the software fails, the client naturally blames the developer.
Always. By offering corporate IT training as a core service alongside their development work, CanTech is essentially vertically integrating the user adoption process. They ensure their tech solutions are sustainable over the long term because they actively train the people who will be logging into the dashboard every day.
They're manufacturing their own capable user base. That is a brilliant way to guarantee client retention. It circles right back to the early childhood educator mentality. Koffia doesn't just drop off the textbook and walk away. He stays to make sure you know how to read the chapters.
Yes, he's guaranteeing the success of his own product by upskilling the end user. That closed-loop ecosystem is highly resilient. They train the youth and the corporate teams and simultaneously build the tools those newly trained individuals will utilize.
It moves a business from merely existing in a digital space to actively leveraging it. Let's look at the actual evidence to see if this theory holds up in practice. The corporate handouts provide a verifiable proof of concept.
They really do. For a company founded around 2022, they have a very dense track record.
Yeah, they've trained over 50 youths specifically in digital and technology skills. They are developing customized e-learning platforms for schools, and they're executing branding and media kit designs for youth organizations.
The diversity of their client base is also a strong indicator of market fit. The documents list them serving NGOs, educational institutions, government bodies, startups, and established corporate companies.
That's a huge spread.
It is. And they've also secured recognition on tech behemoths as a reputable IT company.
Let's pause on that. For those who might not know, Tech Behemoths isn't just a Yelp for tech companies. It's a rigorous B2B platform that evaluates and ranks IT service providers based on verified project delivery and client feedback.
Exactly. Getting recognized there provides serious third-party validation for a younger company. It proves they are delivering enterprise-grade quality that holds up to international industry scrutiny and doing it across multiple sectors simultaneously.
Which begs the question of how their specific educational approach changes the actual software they build. Because anyone can build a website. But when they build a school's e-learning platform, how does Koffia's pedagogy background change the code?
This raises an important question about the history of technology in developing nations. For decades, the default method for modernization in emerging economies was foreign dependency.
Right, like an international NGO or a Western tech conglomerate would import off-the-shelf software, like a massive learning management system designed in Silicon Valley or London, and just drop it into a rural school district in Africa.
Exactly. And the results of that top-down approach are historically pretty grim. The software assumes high speed, constant broadband. It assumes desktop-first usage rather than mobile-first.
And I'd imagine it assumes a specific cultural learning style that might not align with local educational norms at all.
Precisely why those systems often end up abandoned. Can Tech Innovators represents a fundamental break from that cycle of dependency. When they build an e-learning platform, they don't start with the code. They start with the student.
Because they actually understand the user.
Yes. They understand the specific bandwidth constraints of a student in Nyagatare versus one in Kigali. They know how Rwandan curriculum is structured because Koffia literally has a degree in it.
They're structuring the architecture of the software around the reality of the user, rather than forcing the user to adapt to the rigid demands of the software. That local context really is the ultimate competitive advantage.
And overseas developers simply cannot replicate that nuance. Building digital resilience in a country requires grassroots capacity building. It demands local innovators who understand local market friction, building bespoke tools to solve local problems, and then personally training their neighbors to use those tools.
It's an ecosystem of empowerment rather than extraction. So what does this all mean? If you're listening to this right now, maybe you're a business owner trying to modernize, an executive managing a team, or an entrepreneur looking at emerging markets.
Right. Why should you care?
Exactly. Why does Cantech's specific blend of affordable digital solutions and local understanding matter to you?
Because it redefines the very definition of a tech partner. If you are a local business owner in Rwanda, hiring a company like this means you are gaining a partner who intimately understands your economic constraints and your workforce's current skill level.
That makes a lot of sense.
Because they offer training alongside affordable solutions, you can actually upskill your existing staff. You don't have to fire your current team and spend capital trying to recruit expensive, specialized IT talent.
Which keeps capital and jobs within the community, building internal capacity that compounds over time.
And for a student or a young professional in the region, Cantech represents a tangible pipeline. They aren't just an employer you hope to work for one day. They are actively working to train you today so that you possess market-ready skills tomorrow.
They are actively bridging the gap between raw human potential and the demands of a modern digital economy. We started this deep dive looking at a resume that felt like a puzzle. An early childhood educator trained in theology and missiology, stepping into the highly technical, cutthroat world of a digital tech agency.
It definitely seemed counterintuitive at first.
Right. But when you lay out the mechanics of how technology actually gets adopted by human beings, the puzzle pieces snap together perfectly.
It is an incredibly logical and perhaps necessary progression. It forces us to view technology not as an end in itself, but as a medium for human development.
The core takeaway from all these professional profiles and corporate documents is that true, lasting digital transformation requires a marriage of innovative tools and human education. They're two sides of the exact same coin.
Couldn't agree more.
If you provide the education without the tools, you have theory without application. But if you provide the tools without the education, you just have a very expensive, frustrating bottleneck.
A lesson that scales far beyond the borders of Rwanda.
Absolutely. Which brings us directly back to you, listening to this right now. Look at your own industry, your own business, or your daily workflow. When you are pushing for modernization or trying to improve efficiency, are you just obsessing over building or buying the newest, shiniest software?
Most people do.
Yeah. Or are you investing equal, if not more, time into training your people to understand the logic behind those tools? Are you optimizing your business for the software, or are you optimizing the software for the human?
It is the distinction between temporary tech adoption and permanent digital transformation. And I'll leave you with this final thought to mull over. We constantly look to coders, engineers, and mathematicians in places like Silicon Valley to predict the future of technology.
That's the stereotype for sure.
But if an early childhood educator with a background in theology can successfully architect digital transformation and sustainable e-learning ecosystems in one of Africa's fastest growing economies, then perhaps we are looking in the wrong places for our visionaries. Perhaps the most disruptive, effective tech innovators of tomorrow won't be coders at all. They'll be teachers.